understand? How would you understand heavenly things? And simply because the two realms are not the same. And so I'm using what I called dimensional analogy. I'm not the originator of this, I know of this idea. Um, I am propagating this analogy to help us to understand, but you're gonna see that this concept is already established way before um before even we thought of applying it to the Word of God. So we want to tread carefully, and once again, do not add your ideologies to it, your suggestions and opinions and philosophies. Just absorb it the way it is. Let the scripture interpret itself. Do not interpret it. So the main point here is, and this is very similar to what Christ said. Over here, what does he say? Lower dimensional beings cannot fully perceive higher dimensional realities. That is one point. Then it goes on to say a higher dimensional being can fully perceive lower ones. That is brilliant. So, one more, what appears contradictory in the lower frame becomes coherent from a higher one. It explains what Jesus said. If I've told you earthly things you don't understand, how will you understand heavenly things? He made it clear that the heavenly realm is way higher than the way of understanding his words, because like we've seen earlier on, this is not a person under duress. This is a sane person, normal, healthy, and its audience attested to it. Even when the guards who are trained to know who is sane and who is not sane reported back to the high priest, he said, "We've never heard any person talk like this man." If Christ had issues with cognition, it would have been easily recognized by his audience. But he's a healthy man, very intelligent, smart, and here he tells one of the doctors of the law, one of the high-ranking officials among the ruling class, Nicodemus, that if I've spoken to you about higher dimensional realities or heavenly things and you do not about earthly things, lower dimensional realities, and you do not understand, how will you understand heavenly things? Christ made it clear that the heavenly realm is superior and higher than the earthly realm, and the form of knowledge and communication uh, inside the heavenly realm is superior to the one in the earthly realms. So it becomes so clear that lower dimensional beings, they cannot fully perceive higher dimensional realities. Yes, they might understand part of it, but they can't understand the whole story. And that being said, we have to also look at it in reverse. A higher dimensional being can fully perceive lower dimensional ones. And it makes sense that even Nicodemus, he partly understood what Jesus said, but then there were some aspects that he did not understand. And he had to even question Christ concerning that with regards to being born again. He said, how can you enter your mother's womb after you have been born to be reborn? And Jesus was very astonished and he said, if you, being a teacher of the law, does not understand, and that looked so surprising to Christ. So, what appears contradictory in a lower frame becomes coherent from a higher one. So, like he was saying, Nicodemus did not understand the concept of being born again. It was the first time, it was unprecedented hearing such a statement. And even the guards, they reported back to the high priest that we've never heard anyone speak like this. In their case, these were new stuff. These were novel ideas that they've never heard before. But these ideas were well understood from a higher plane. Like John in the book of Revelation saw the Lamb of God that was slain. So he came to take the scroll. What John saw as a living person who wasn't dead yet, as you saw, what you saw from his perspective, from the earthly perspective, it was a slain lion. But what did one of the elders told him? He said, weep not, for the lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. Okay, so here, what was he describing? They were all looking at the same thing, but the description came from different perspective. John from the lower dimensional perspective, the elder from the heavenly perspective. So we don't see the same, way, and we don't perceive things the same way. Those from the higher plane can see far better. In fact, the elder could tell more about the person who took the scroll than even what John saw. When John was seen as something that is slain and almost partly dead, the elder said, no, this is not a lamb. This the lion of the tribe of Judah. And he goes on to talk about its origin. It's the same person, the root of David. So he has prevailed. And he even foretells things to come. So it makes sense that what appears contradictory in the lower frame, it becomes coherent. Things we can understand. Sometimes you can have a dream, you fully understand what you are seeing, but when you come out of the dream, you begin to forget it. And there are cases whereby you hear voices, or you see colors, or you see things from in a vision, or from a dream standpoint, and you fully understand what you are seeing. For as long as you remain in that realm, you are in that dream or vision or that trance, you can fully understand everything going on. If it is a communication, if it's a form of communication, you will understand. If it is about colors, pictures, you will fully make sense out of it. Why? Because we are conscious beings, we are interdimensional beings in this body. We are not the physical body, we are spirit beings, and spirits are not constrained by time. Spirits are interdimensional beings, we are hyperdimensional. So when we are freed, when we come out of our body and we enter temporarily into the higher dimensional realms, we are able to understand everything without any so-called contradiction. Everything begins to make sense. But once we come back into our body and we begin to transmit the information from our soul into our brain, which works with our minds, they are not able to process those information. So we are not able to translate those details, those key details to um for to make sense for our audience to actually appreciate it. And the reason is because we as humans, we experience reality from a limited ontological frame. Our brain is actually not an interdimensional organ. As an organ is limited, we know it's a 3D stuff, and it is not able to process such hyperdimensional details. Um, God and everything about Him exist beyond our frame, our realm. We are constrained by the by the frame of time, but God is not restrained by time. So that is why when we go into the supernatural realm, into the hyperdimensional realm, and we see stuff, when we come back into our limited dimension, into the lower dimension, we're not able to share it very well. Even when you share, not everybody might believe. It's not by force to believe something. I think we shouldn't force people to believe whether Jesus Christ is God or not, because not everybody can fully grab it. So there is an issue with communication between the higher dimension and the lower dimension. You see, this divine disclosure, the only way the two realms can communicate is to translate and find a common denominator. And that is why Christ did when he was explaining the concept of the kingdom. He will often use a parable, because a parable uh, is a decoded form of uh, the truth or the true realities that exist in the higher dimension. That is the form of communication that has been embodied by time to allow the listeners to comprehend. So let's zoom, let's jump in further, and let's theologically synthesize this idea of dimension, dimensional model. Now remember, I'm using it as an analogy to help us explain, because here we have two frames, two claims. One saying Jesus Christ is the Son of God and hence there's the Father, and the other frame we see he is the same as God. And to the ordinary person, this is contradiction, but to some of us and our understanding of dimensional models, this is a form of communication. Because look, we have paradoxes even within our scientific frame. If you look at light, we all know it has a dual nature. It can behave as a particle, it can also behave as a wave, all at the same time. And so that is an example of a paradox. There are other several paradoxes, two things occurring at the same time. Even in a simplistic way, we have concepts like solving a simultaneous equation, where you have two variables that you are solving for at the same time in the same equation. Are these things possible? Everything is possible when we examine it well. So you can have a paradox. So before we go there, to understand how our finite understanding becomes a limitation, we need to know what a dimension is. It is simply an independent direction or a degree of freedom needed to describe a system. So we are going to use this model to help us to describe a system and to look at the directionality of it and the freedom to do so. So here, a dimension answers the following question. We try to explore how many independent measurements do I need to locate or to describe something. That is explicitly excellent. So like Jesus told Nicodemus, you must be born again. Then he responds, how can you be born again once you are already alive? Must you enter into your mother's womb? And he said so. He was very right to make such an argument, because he said so based on the fact that the only way you can be born is after you have been conceived. From our natural experiences, without conception, there can be no birth experience. So for a person to be born, you need to be conceived. And he was wrong in his perception, though he was right from his perspective, that what Jesus meant by being born again has nothing to do with conception, physical conception, sexual reproduction here. He was talking about another form of um of death experience that he knew nothing of. And Jesus Christ needed some degree of freedom and some measurements to remold that information so that he can understand. And he later did so when he said you need to be born of the spirit and water. And then there Nicodemus did not make any protest. So in the same way, for you to describe something from another dimension, what are the key measurements you're going to put in place and the modeling that will allow your listener to fully understand what you are saying? Just as today, whether Jesus Christ is God or not, it becomes an argument because of the limited degree of freedom from the side of the presenter, uh, and his limitation in presenting this information clearly to his audience. So we're going to start by exploring dimensions. We're going to look at it from the perspective of time and space. So first of all, we start with zero dimensions. It's like a zero universe. That is a point. An example is a point. So a zero-dimensional universe is a point that has no length, no width, and no height. It is only a position. It has only a position, but there is no extension. So it's just like a dot, just like a full stop. So in as much as we are looking at um, different realms, and these are all existent. These dimensions, they are literally existent, not just theoretical. And we're looking at a universe where there is no length to that universe. It has no length, it has no width, it has no height. It is just a dot. We're going to explore it further. So we can represent it with just a single coordinate. In this universe or in that realm, there's no size to anything. Nothing has a size or a structure. You can't extend it. It's an existence, a universe without extension. Then from there we go to the one-dimensional universe, which is a line. So one dimension has a length only. In this universe, you can move forward and backward. It can be a line or any line or a straight line or a curve. And over here, one thing we need to understand about um, such a universe is that if we're being in a one-dimensional universe, there's a limited degree of freedom from our point of view. But then to that being, that is what freedom is. This being can move to the left and right, but then cannot perceive thickness in terms of width and height. That being will never know it. What about a two-dimensional being? That is a plane, a universe that appears like a plane. It has length and width. There is no depth to it. Example is a sheet of paper or drawing. All the artwork we make on paper, all the pictures we have, they are all two-dimensional. So in a two-dimensional universe, a 2D being can move forward and backward, left and right, but can never know what up and down is. Then we go to 3D universe that deals with space. So a three-dimensional space has length, width, and height. Hence, the objects have volume. It has three coordinates x, y, and z, and that is where we live as human beings. We are 3D beings. Our universe is 3D. The universe, the places or the things we see, they are all 3D. We can perceive depth, shape, and distance. But then there is also another higher dimension, which is the fourth dimension. Theoretically, is said to be the dimension of time, where Einstein actually tried to explain. Over there are four coordinates, and objects are constantly in motion. You have to move. Things are always moving. Movement through time is unavoidable, and time is experienced linearly. Well, now I want us to enrich our understanding. I want to enrich our understanding of time. Remember what Jesus said. If I've spoken to you about earthly things and you don't understand, how will you understand heavenly things? And how can a person be two things at the same time? How can you be the first position and the last at the same time? How can you be the beginning and at the same time the end at the same time? Well, I use the word at the same time. So we're going to take the concept of time out and let us look at it as it is. So over here, we're going to start with the first unit. We're going to illustrate it. That remember, our reality determines our perception. How we see things is determined by the realm in which we are. So, like Nicodemus was told, I've told you earthly things and you don't understand. How will you understand heavenly things? So let's look at the first dimension, which is zero dimensions. So that is a universe that appears like a dot. So imagine you enter such a universe. It will be anything you've never seen before. It won't be like what you're used to. This is a universe that appears like a dot. In this universe, all you can do, everything you can understand, your perception, your ideology, they are all limited here. This is it. If there is something called stars, moon, sunlight, water, whatever we see here, if it is supposed to exist in this universe, everything will look stationary. There is no movement. Everything is limited. In this universe, we're just looking at a point. This point has no length, it has no width, it has no height. That is the reality the entities in this universe find themselves. There is no extension. You can't extend it. You can't make it large. You can't make it small. They don't know anything about big or small. All that they know is that they are there. It's an immeasurable universe. It has no size, no structure. You can't tell what you are seeing here. So beings that are in this universe, they don't know anything called length because it is not part of their reality. They can't perceive it. Even if you describe the shape of a triangle, they won't understand. If you draw a line and you show it to them, they won't see it. It is impossible for them. To them, their reality is different from ours. Now, there is something else. So, as a creator, you saw that these people here, they are so handicapped because they are just stationary. They are actually limited, seriously limited, such that they can't even move. So, from your goodwill, you try to improve uh, upon their degree of existence. You wanted to add some degree of freedom to their existence. So, what do? You place a second dot. Now, when you have two dots, what do you have now? You have a line. So now that you have extended the universe, because they couldn't extend it themselves, someone from outside will have to do it. Had I not placed the dot, there wouldn't have been a line. Those in this universe wouldn't have been able to extend this line. They need an external source. That external influence cannot be one dimensional. Whoever extended this universe can't come from this dimension. It cannot come from a one dimension universe because they can't. So whoever created made this expansion or improvement come from a higher dimension. It come from any other dimension other than the zero dimension. So now that we have extended it, we have a line. What do we have? We no longer have a zero dimension. We no longer have a point. Now, these beings here, they are able to move for the first time. They can move forward and then they can also move backward. So that is splendid. For the first time, they're going to experience movement because they have been in a universe where there was nothing called movement because there was no extension. So now they can move, and because they can move in one direction, that is forward or backward only. What do we have here? We have length. This universe has length. It is a one-dimensional universe. It's a line. Things can move forward and backward only. It can be a curve, it can be a straight line, it can be anything, but it is just a line. So now, beings that are 1D, the entities that are living here, they know what movement is. For the first time, they can experience movement. They can move forward and backward. But then there is something they will never know. They don't know what up and down is. They don't know how to go up or down. They don't also know anything about thickness. So, um, for for that to happen, uh, we need a being from a higher dimension, a being who knows about width and height to come in. Because even though there's an extension, there's an improvement on the zero dimension, there is still a great deal of limitation. So, let's see what can be done. So, you or the creator who created the 0 point, the one-dimensional universe, and then Roma it started with the zero dimension, and now it's a one dimension. She started with just a dot, so now with another dot we have a one dimension. We have a line. The beings can now move, but then we saw that there was a great deal of limitation. So, all right, the creator decided to improve, even though from the zero dimension to the one dimension, the beings are able to experience motion. He discovered that no, there's a great deal of limitation because they don't know anything about height or width. They have no idea about area. They can only move in a straight line. So we decided to put another dot here and then another dot here. And by joining them, we have a second line. That is beautiful. So if you have four dots and you join all of them together, now what do you have? Now you have a new universe. You have a universe where your creation can move Because before then they were stationary, then you extended it, now they could move. Now what do we have? We have actually expanded their universe through extension. We have added more dimensions to it. Now your creation can move, they can walk around, they can experience motion on a larger plane, unlike before. So what we have here, that is a two-dimensional universe. This universe has length and width, but there's no depth. Okay, there's no thickness. It's just like a sheet of paper. Most of the things we watch on TV, everything we watch on TV, the things we write on paper, they are all two-dimensional. So remember, it was a 0 dimension, then we went on to 1 dimension. Now we are looking at 2 dimension here with 2 coordinates. So a 2D being can now do the following. Before then they could just move left and right, but now with the extension that it has been given, now these beings can move forward, they can move backward, they can move left and right. They can now experience movement in an area. They have a plane. So that is something they are actually experiencing. However, just like the 0 dimension and the 1 dimension limitation, the beings that are in this 2D universe, they cannot, not that they are refusing to, it would never occur to them to know anything called up or down. They have no idea. It is not within the reality of this universe. The fabric of this 2D universe will not produce up or down movement. All you can do is to move back and forward. That is it. If a being from a higher dimension tries to tell them about something called up and down, they will never understand. Why? It is not within the fabric of their universe or reality to know what up and down is. And that is a serious limitation. So, again, remember it took a higher dimensional being to extend the 0 dimension to 1 dimension. And it took a higher dimensional being, someone who is beyond the 1 dimensional being, to extend the 1 dimension to 2 dimension. So now that we have seen these beings here, these 2D beings, 2 dimensional beings are still constrained by their reality in which they find themselves. Hence, we want to offer an assistance. If the creator wants to help them to experience a universe where they will know what up and down is, then that creator should actually come from a higher dimension. If if that creator is a 2 dimensional being, he will never be able to even consider providing an extension to say, let me add up and down to this reality. So, because of this handicap, and even though there is a huge degree of freedom and their limitation, well, the being is actually deciding to provide an improvement. Now, in looking at all these things, one thing that we need to know is that when we talk about 2 dimension, even though I've represented it here as a rectangle, there are different ways you can represent it. Imagine if there are several multiverse that are 2 dimensional, or several 2 dimensional multiverse. How would they look like? Some will look like a triangle, okay, which is also 2 dimension. Others will look like a circle, and then some will even look like a cross. Some will look like a hexagon. Others will look like a pentagon. All these shapes, these are plane figures, and they are all 2 dimensional. They all have length and width. But then in this universe, you can never perceive uh, up or down direction. You can't perceive height or depth, even though there is a degree of freedom. So, but then it's just 2 dimension. So the creator realized, okay, these beings are still constrained by the reality in which they find themselves. So he decides to provide an extension to expand the universe so that his creation can experience up and downward motion. So what do? You place a dot here. There's a 0 dimension, huge limitation, no motion. You place another dot, You join them together. Now your beings can experience motion for the first time in one direction. So that is a one dimension here. But then it caused a great deal of limitation, since there is a huge limitation in terms of their degree of freedom. So to give them more freedom, you increase the number of dots to provide an extension, and by doing so, now your creation can move around. They can experience left and right, forward and backward motion. But that is not all. You want your creation to experience up and down, because for as long as the reality remains this way, your creation can never perceive what is called thickness. They can't tell what thickness is. Like today, we know things have thickness, height, and depth. For your creation to experience it, we have to provide an additional extension. And how do you do it? You use multiple zero dimension to do that. And what do you have here? We have 3 dots, additional dots, making it 7. And so what do? I provide an extension to it. Wow. Now what have I done? My creation will not just know about length and width, or length and breadth. Now I've added this dimension. The sides here will now add new perspective to everything here. For the first time, my creation will know about length, and then they will also know about something called thickness. They will now be able to perceive that things have thickness. They can now see things in a better form. But then they will now be able to experience another thing. That is, if I join all the sides together, for the first time, I have expanded their degree of freedom. Now they will now know what height is. We can actually talk about up or downward motion, because before then they were just stationary, standing at one place. Then I extended the universe. Now they could move forward and back. Now they could even go through the thickness of their reality. I've turned their universe into what is called a three-dimensional universe. Now they can move in all directions. And what have we done? We have created space, we have created volume. In this universe, there is length, width, and height, giving it a spatial capacity with 3 coordinates. And guess what again? That is where we live. This is our reality. We are 3D beings. All human beings, all animals, the planet, the galaxy, the earth itself, our universe currently, we perceive it in 3D form. We live here. But then, as much as you are looking at this 3-dimensional universe, you have to also understand all the sub-dimensions are also here. We can perceive in this universe what depth is. Depth, that is thickness. We can perceive shape. We can perceive distance. We can measure speed. We can do all kinds of things here. And also, in as much as we can perceive things in 3 dimensions, remember, we can also perceive all the lower dimensions all at once. So if you look at this shape here, this object here, you can see the 0 dimension here. Those are the dots. You can also see 1 dimension. Those are the lines you are seeing. You can also see 2 dimension. That is the sides. Okay, so you can see this whole side. All the 3 dimensions can all be seen at once. If you remember the earlier statement, we said a higher dimensional being can perceive all the realities of the lower dimensional beings. So a being who is in a higher dimension understands everything going on in the lower dimension all at once. They can see every part, every component of the existence of the lower dimension. So one key thing we shouldn't forget here is that if you look at this object here, the 0D, the 1 dimension, and the 2 dimension, they are all embedded in the 3D. So within the 3 dimension, you can find all the sub dimensions. So we can see 0 dimension, we can see 1 dimension, we can see 2 dimension, all at once, all within our 3D plane. where we live, the things we use, the houses, the cars, the objects we use, they are all three dimension, and they all consist of the three sub components which form part of the lower dimensional realities. Let's talk about the fourth dimension here. What about a fourth dimensional universe? Are there other universes that are above ours? Because we live in a 3D, and whoever created this 3D cannot be a 3D being, because if the one who created us is just like us, then that will offer him a great deal of limitation. So whatever created us was actually a hyperdimensional being, because as we know, there is a fourth dimension, and this is what you are seeing here. So we're going to explore what this fourth dimension is. That means whatever created us with a 3D is not 3D, is beyond 3D. Now, what you have on your screen is a fourth dimension cube. If I ask you, how many objects do you see here? There'll be several opinions. Some will say, well, two, because as you can see, actually your brain will tell you what you are seeing is two boxes here. But no, what you are seeing is just one. This is what is called a tesseract. This is a representation of a four-dimensional cube. It looks like a cube within a cube, similar to a wheel within a wheel in the book of Ezekiel. But one key thing about the fourth dimension is that in the fourth dimension, things are constantly in motion. So it's not like you can have an object standing there stationary. In the fourth dimension, this is how things look like. This is the fourth dimensional cube. And as you keep on looking, the previous frame that I showed you, it looked like there is a cube within a cube. It looks like two in one. And you may argue it with your brain, because we need to know there is no way we can project a four-dimensional object into our three-dimensional reality, because our reality is not created to produce four-dimensional being. We can't see a four-dimensional object. No one has ever seen it before, but we have a theoretical representation of it. We have a model of it. And even though we try to remake it or make a three-dimensional object in our universe, it ends up looking like a 3D. Now, on your screen, what I've shown you on your screen is a two-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional cube, because the screen you are looking at cannot produce three-dimensional objects. For you to produce or to put three-dimensional objects in reality, then we are going to need another system to do that. So this cube you are seeing here is just a 2D representation of a four-dimensional object, but then we tried our best to make it look three-dimensional to your brain. So what you are seeing here is a fourth dimension, and the fourth dimension is set to be controlled by time, or the fourth dimension is actually time, and time causes motion. In other words, the fourth-dimensional universe is constantly moving. There is motion. Things are not static like you are seeing here. So what you think are two objects, what you think you are seeing here, that looks like two objects, one is larger than the other, they are actually one and the same thing, because over here you can see on one side this object appears like there are two of it, then on the other side they look like it's just one thing. Your brain can't process it, and don't blame yourself if your brain can't process it, because you are a three-dimensional being, and what you are looking at here is a four-dimensional object. This four-dimensional object, or this object you are looking at, it comes from a universe that you are not born into. It doesn't form part of your reality. Your brain is a 3D object, so it can't fully process what a 4D is. This is the best humans can produce or depict when it comes to understanding dimension. This another object that is also used to portray four-dimensional things. So again, we might ask the same question: how many objects are here? On one side, you see they look like two, At the same time, they look like they are one. So that is a problem with trying to understand three-dimensional, four-dimensional thing, or things that are hyperdimensional. It is difficult for our brain, which is three-dimensional, to make sense of anything that is above it. Anything from 4, 5, 6 dimension, our mind can't process it properly. We can only see a part of it. We can only understand one side of it. We can only understand it in terms of 3D, but we can't fully understand it the way it is. This is a form of communication, but then it is also handicapped. The information is not being received well. Not that the information is wrong, but then the receiver doesn't have the ability to process it. So a single object will appear like two objects. At the same time, it returns back to it being single. And at the same time, it becomes double. It is similar to what Christ was talking about. He said he is the Son of God and he has a father. Then at the same time, he's telling us that he is the father and he is also the son. I mean, how can you be two things at the same time? So that's what we are seeing here. It looks like it is one, it looks like it is two. It looks like it is two, then it ends up appearing as one. We can't fully tell what is going on here. That is an information from a higher dimension. That is an object from a hyper-dimensional plane. And so this is the kind of analogy I'm sending across. So this is it. Even though this is the best we can produce as humans, it has its own limitation. So let's look at the four dimension like we saw earlier on. With regards to the four dimension, we said here that it deals with time and the objects are constantly in motion. Movement through time is unavoidable. So because there is always movement taking place, the objects don't appear stationary. They don't appear to be what we know it to be. So this is another depiction of four-dimensional objects. But like I told you earlier on, you can only see it fully if you're in the fourth dimension. But because we are in the third dimension, when this fourth dimensional object enters our plane of existence, our reality, it changes it automatically. It gives form to it. And the kind of form it gives to it is the form that is fabricated into its making. Uh, our universe can only produce 3D, no matter what. No matter what, because that is the fabric of our reality. The fabric of our reality is 2D, is 3D. So if we bring a higher dimensional thing into our reality will convert it into a 3D. It is going to be very difficult to produce in reality. If something maintains its form, if a hyperdimensional object maintains its form from its reign, if a 4D object is survives and maintains its form in our 3D universe, that will be very bizarre. We won't be able to tell what we are seeing. We'll be seeing stuff that will blow our minds off. So remember when God came on Mount Sinai, we saw what happened. I mean, the fabric of reality was tearing apart. There was smoke, there was lightning, there was thundering, there was shaking, because when a higher dimensional being tries to enter a lower dimension, maintaining the way he is. If a higher dimensional being enters our dimensions in its true nature, it will create a disturbance. So normally, when a higher dimensional being enters our three-dimensional universe, our 3D universe actually envelopes it. It gives it a form. It gives it a 3D form. It's like a bubble. It's like air in water. The water forms a bubble around it, so that we can see that there is air there. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to perceive it. When God came into our reality, in order not to cause any disturbance in across our time and space, He came as Jesus. He appeared as Jesus. Our reality gave Him a form, and He appeared as one of us. And for as long as we remain in this dimension, we would never think, it would never cross our mind that this is God. until he gives us the indicators. Had John not told his disciples that this is the Lamb of God that was slain from the foundation of the earth, had he not told them, he would never have known that that is Jesus. Had John not seen the Holy Spirit descend on Jesus Christ during his baptism, he too would never have known that this is God. So, if a high dimensional object allows itself uh, uh, to be morphology, I want to use this word morphology, or to be given a form, okay, there is no way we will ever be able to make sense out of it. Giving a form to an object can only be achieved by the dimension in which the object finds itself. This is the interior of a four-dimensional cube, and you can see how everything becomes distorted and how infinity is established. It is just one object, but in the interior, it looks like a world without end, a universe that goes on and on and on. That is eternity here. So, how do you produce infinity in a finite object? This is it. Actually, if they show you the cube looks three-dimensional. Like I said, you can't produce a higher dimensional object in a three-dimensional object, maintaining its integrity. No, that's not going to be possible. So this is the best we can produce in terms of depicting um, four-dimensional object. What about higher dimensional stuff, objects? These are stuff we can make sense of. We know in theory that there are other higher dimensions, like we have as many as 10 dimensions and even 11 dimensions. There are even more, and uh, most of these dimensions are said to be extremely small. They are compactified or folded. And imagine seeing entering into a 10-dimensional universe. I wonder how such a universe will be. And for as long as you are three-dimensional beings, nothing will make sense. So, one thing we need to know when it comes to the criticality of the whole concept is that a being in a higher dimension can perceive and interact with lower dimensions completely. Uh, However, a lower dimensional being cannot fully perceive the higher one. So, it is what Jesus Christ said. If I've spoken to you about earthly things and you don't understand, how will you understand heavenly things? So that statement is very critical. Beings that come from heaven, they fully understand everything going on here. But we can't fully, we can perceive part of it, a part of the truth, but not the whole truth. Paul said, we know in part and we see in part. So here, a 3D being can see an entire 2D world, yes, all at once. But then the 2D being can only see only a slice, a tiny part of it. You can only see a two-dimensional part of it. If there's a two-dimensionality to that object, that 2D being will see it. And that is what we look at here. The main emphasis here in this frame you are looking at is this person here. It is the viewer, what I call the conscious observer. It is not what the object is trying to say. It's not the information the object is trying to give to this object that is critically important here. But then how the viewer perceives the information is the whole thing. That is why when Jesus Christ said he's the Son of God, hence he has a Father, it is easy to understand because in our universe too, we have a son-father relationship. We have that son-father figure there. It is easy to comprehend that Jesus Christ is a son and he has a father. I mean, we all have it. I mean, if you're a father, you know you have a son. Now you can't say you are the son, and your father can't say your son can't say he's the father. We don't have it in our three-dimensional universe. But then, in a higher dimensional universe, somebody who is a father can also appear as a son, and somebody who is a son can also appear the same way as the son. Even though a single person is a father, son, uncle, cousin, friend, etc., there is a limitation to it. So what we perceive is actually influenced by the observer. The scripture tells us beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. It is up to the observer to tell what we are seeing. It is not up to the object. The object cannot decide on its own. Rather, it will take the observer to decide what he or she is seeing. So if God tells you, let's say, if Jesus Christ said, I'm the Son of God, hence I have a Father, how will you perceive it or conceive it if now he tells us that he is the same as the Father? Well, that information will be, it will now rest, everything will now rest on the one who is observing or the listener. So just like you can see here, we have a 3D objects being viewed by this person. If this person lives in a 2D universe, you see, in this 2D universe, it doesn't matter how big this object is, even though it is 3D, for as long as it will enter, or for as long as it enters into this 2D universe, the object will appear as 2D. You see, even though the object is 3 dimension as it is here, but then the moment it enters into the 2D universe, the universe will not maintain the integrity of this object. The 2D universe is not created to produce 3D object. It can only produce only 2-dimensional. It's as simple as that. So the people here in this 2D universe, they will be seeing only a circle. A circle is 2-dimensional, but the object isn't a circle. Again, this is a cube. Those in the 2-dimensional universe, what would they see? Would they see a cube? No, they won't see a cube. They can only see a slice of it. They only see it from the 2D perspective. No matter how you describe it to them, you can try it and try it and try it and tell them what a square, a cube looks like. You can tell them what a ball looks like. They've never seen a ball before. It will never cross their minds. They just can't, because not that they don't want to, it's because they live in a 2D universe, and you are bringing something from a higher dimension and you are projecting it into a 2 dimension, and you expect it to maintain its integrity. That's not going to be possible. You're going to only have one side of the story. So Jesus Christ tells us he's the Son of God. That one we are fine with it, because it is within our nature to understand it, because we experience it. On the other side, he tells us he's God, and that is it becomes a problem. So what are you trying to tell us? But you are a human being, you were born. How can you be born and be God? God, to be God means you are eternal. The person can't agree. So it makes sense that when you are projecting a higher dimensional object into a lower dimensional object, the universe of the lower dimensional object, it actually converts the higher dimensional object into a form that the beings in the lower dimensional object can fully understand. So the 3D being here, they can see the entirety of this 2-dimensional plane. They can see perfectly whatever is here. But then those here, they can't see everything that is here because of the universe in which they find themselves. So this concept is very important for us to appreciate the things we see. This is also another analogy by Edwin Abbott. We are 3D being. Imagine you dip your hand into a 2-dimensional universe. What would they see? What would the beings in the 2-dimensional universe see? Would they see a real hand? They can't see a real hand. It will not be possible, because the 3D universe can be projected in all its entirety and integrity into a 2D universe. And the 2D universe is not fabricated to produce 3D objects. So they're going to see just a slice of it. So if you put your hand into a 2D universe, what would they see? They'll just see a circle, a slice of your hand. And to them, they would think that there's an object appeared in the sky, and they were like, what is happening? Something appeared and the thing disappeared. Even if you go and try and explain to them that that was a human hand, they will never understand because they've never seen a hand before. So this is how an object from a three-dimensional universe will look like in a two-dimensional realm. In the same way, if we drop a ball and a cube into a two-dimensional universe, how will it appear? So this is what they will see. Remember, they can't see the entire 3D. They only see a slice of it. So once the object actually enters that universe, only a circle. In the case of the ball, they will see a circle. So they will see a circle in the sky. And then in the case of the box, they will just see a rectangle. And then it will start as a small object. It will grow in size, and then it will disappear. That is all. No matter how you try to explain to them, you can try from day to night, from morning to night, to explain uh, what a square, what a cube, or what a ball looks like. They are not going to understand it because our reality does not allow us to see those things. We are not allowed to understand. We are not made to fathom things that are beyond our dimension. So one thing we need to know is if a higher dimensional object enters a lower dimension, it appear as multiple disconnected shapes. They will be changing forms. They will be changing of forms, and the forms will actually be geometrically contradictory. So, for example, if a 3D sphere is passing through a 2D plane, it's gonna appear as a growing and as a shrinking circle because the 2D plane can produce a 3D object. It can only produce a 2D version of that 3D object. So no matter how you try to convince those entities there, they won't understand. Okay, so this helps to explain why dimensional realities they appear paradoxical, they appear confusing when it is described from a lower dimensional point of view. So, like we said carefully here, if a ball enters into a 2D plane, how will it look like? The moment the tip of the ball touches the plane, it will look like a small circle. It may even start like a dot and it will grow in size into a small circle. Once much of it passes through the plane, it will look like a bigger circle. And once the object leaves that universe, it will now look like a dot. So those in this universe, those in the 2D universe, they won't see this, what you are seeing here. They're actually going to see a small dot. The dot will become bigger and then it will shrink in size. It will just appear like a glow of light, or a circle will appear in the sky and then it grows in size and then it disappears. And that is all. So from their perspective, oh, that is just one of the circles or one of the objects that we are all used to. But in actuality, it wasn't actually a circle. It was a ball. That is similar to when Christ came, though he was God, our reality gave him a form. Okay, he was morphologized into a human being. He appeared like a human with a form. It's like a bubble in water, or it's like putting oil in water. The water surrounds it, or depending on the quantity. If you have more water than the oil, the water surrounds the oil. If you have more oil than water, the oil surrounds the water. So when God came into our reality gave him a form. He took on the form of a bond servant, like the scripture tells us. He took on the form, meaning he wasn't a bond servant. You don't become something that you already are. He wasn't a bond servant. He put on the form of a bond servant. And that is how we look at stuff. Although we haven't, it's not fully proven in the science. We have to know that consciousness exists, though it's certainly not proven. Though it is confined in this body, the Bible states that we have these treasures in earthen vessels. So we are spirit beings, conscious beings, interdimensional beings dwelling inside this body, because we can't live freely outside this body like that. So we are constrained. There's some kind of limitation. We are able to interact with our universe through this body, which is three dimension. We're able to project our consciousness through it. In looking at all the facts, like if you look at this cylinder here, even though it's 3D, if these planes are two-dimensional planes, these are two distinct universes, one on the right, one on the left, and over here we have a cylinder. How will it be projected into this universe? From this universe, you're going to see a circle. From that universe, you're going to see only one side of it, which is going to be something like a rectangle. Those in those in this universe, or in each universe, they are all going to be convinced of what they've seen. Yes, this will say, yeah, we've seen a circle in the sky, in our 2D sky. This one will also say this is a rectangle in our 2D sky, because these are two-dimensional universes. But then in actuality, this object is not two-dimensional. This object is neither a circle or a rectangle. It is actually a composition of both of them. So what those here in this universe will be saying is the story correct, and what those in this universe is also saying is also correct. They are both saying what they think they are seeing from their universe, because they are 2D universe. But in actuality, this object is not 2D. Same applies to the truth we have today. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Now Jesus Christ is God. So we human beings, we take the ones that we are comfortable with, the ones that are easy to deal with. Because if you go and say Jesus Christ is God, and then they start bombarding you with questions, and you're able to defend it, it may look like your claims are false. So most of the time, people don't go for that part of the truth where he said he's the Father, because it's contradictory, it's paradoxical to the human reasoning. The person can't understand it. Was Yeah, most of the preachers are fathers themselves. They have kids, they have children, and their children calls them father, and they call their children son or daughter. And there's no way your son can be you, and there's no way you can be your son. So if Jesus Christ make a statement by saying he's the Son of God, it becomes easier for them to understand. But once he makes also the claim that he is a father, that's where there's confusion in the minds of most preachers. So what do? They ignore the side where Jesus Christ said he is the Father, because it's an uncomfortable truth. I don't have a problem if somebody makes a claim that, oh, Jesus Christ is not God. Yeah, you are still fine, because it is one side of the truth. It is true that Jesus Christ is the Son. That means he is not God, right? It is also true to say Jesus Christ is the Father. That means he is not just a Son. But then what is the truth? That is the question Pilate asked Jesus. What is truth? Truth is when you put both sides of the coin together. That is when we put both sides of the story together. He is not just the Son of God, he is also God. That is the message he's trying to convey. So, infinite beings cannot fully describe infinite language. It is not within our reality. One reality can appear as multiple expressions. That is something we need to accept. A tesseract, a four-dimensional cube, when it enters into our dimension, it will look like several shapes. That doesn't mean there are many of it. It's just one thing. It's like Jesus Christ said, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now we are saying there are three. No, he didn't say there are three. He said baptize them in the name, not the names. But then, you know, uh, it's a problem. Infinite beings cannot fully be described by finite language. One reality can appear as multiple expressions. Yeah. So paradox may reflect dimensional limitation. It is not a contradiction. The contradiction rests on us, not on the one who is presenting the truth. Jesus Christ is the truth. He knows everything. We have to know higher dimensional reality can appear self-contradictory when viewed from a lower dimension. The words of Jesus may look very contradictory, but it's a paradox. I mean, you are the Son of God, now you are God. Well, this is something that is not heard of. So, what are the key takeaway? One thing we need to know that human understanding is bound by uh, three dimensions and time, 3D plus time. If a higher dimensional being exists, we should expect paradoxes, not contradictions. And then we have to also know what looks illogical from below is perfectly coherent from above. So that is the end of part one. This is not something we draw into conclusion. I don't recommend arguing with people concerning those sayings of Christ, that he's the Son of God here, and the other side he said he's God. I don't advise people to argue. This is something you learn, you read, you study. It's something you research, because argument won't solve the whole problem. So with this foundation, I'll be going on further to explore mapping the dimensional model to biblical theology. God bless you. May God enlighten you and cause His word to burn in your heart as you embark on this journey to explore deeper truth. And I believe, I'm very confident that after this series, you won't look at the book of Revelation or the Bible, or you won't look at Jesus Christ the same way, or you won't look at reality the same way. We have to look at things from another perspective. We are lucky to have the Holy Spirit who allow us to see things the way they are. God bless you, God strengthen you, and may He enable you to meditate on His word, to synthesize it, and to fully comprehend it as He wants us to do. Thank you, God.